Things can sometimes happen in unexpected twists. I was thinking, what am I going to say this morning? And there's two people that shouldn't really be here this morning, but are. But anyway, I'll keep going. Mission, what is it? If I asked you that word, what would you tell me? What would you describe mission, the word mission?
Selfless service for God.
Selfless service, yeah. Remember Christ, his last words in Matthew, where go ye into all the world, he sent his disciples on a mission. Preach the gospel, yeah. Sharing, wasn't it? That's pretty well what the disciples did. They shared their testimony of what Jesus had done for them. Now, going back into the Old Testament, my mind came to remember a little captive Jewish girl that had been taken by I think it was the Syrians up north, and she was turned into a servant girl, and she was sent on a mission too, because she eventually was able to pass on some knowledge that helped her master get over probably the most dreaded disease in the world at that time, and that was leprosy. And that helped Naaman. And we think, oh yeah, so Naaman got cured, big deal. But Naaman would have gone home and shared his testimony, wouldn't he? And by that little act of a girl opening her mouth and said, oh, go down to the prophet and he'll heal you, and he did. That sent off as a snowball effect, didn't it? And that would have carried on, and the results will only be known in heaven. Paul is probably the biggest missionary that we know of in the New Testament. I've recently just finished reading the book. What's it called? The History of the Waldenses. And often we think of them as just being people living in northern Italy that got tortured every now and then. But it's interesting to read their history and know how far they reached. They reached all over Europe and outside Europe. They were missionaries to heart. Outside of the Roman Catholic school system, they run the biggest private school system in the world. But the follower-up is the Seventh-day Adventist school system. We're the biggest Protestant group that owns more schools than anyone else. And from very, very big schools like universities right down to tiny little one-roomers with a grass hut on. My first experience with an overseas Adventist school, Seventh-day Adventist school, was back in 1986. I went to a tiny little island south of Guadalcanal in the Solomon Group called Bologna. There had been a fly and build into there, and they'd put up a 2 or 3 room school, but they'd only put up the frame and the outside walls, and then they had to go home. And we were a follow-on behind group that we lined it and put the divisions in between the rooms, because it was just one big open cavity inside, so one class could hear the next, and it was a bit of chaos. And there was no windows on the building, and all the kids were sitting on the floors, so we made up desks and everything. It was a huge boost to them, and I've never forgotten it. And that brings us on to another school that's only about 10 years old, I believe, Mark. 10 or 12 years old. 14 years. Well, Dr. Mark, I only discovered yesterday that he was going to be here. And Kay said, do you want him to come along and tell him? Oh, that was, yes, of course. Otherwise, I'd be just here talking to you by myself. So God has very unexpected ways of answering our even our unspoken prayers. So Mark is going to tell us about his school, or the school that is associated with your end of the block, isn't it? And what's going on there, a bit about the history, how it started, where it started and how it's grown. So Mark, I'll hand it over to you. I believe you got some pictures to show us.
Can we have a screen on? Happy Sabbath, everybody. Is anybody wearing jeans today? I didn't think I was going to be in Australia this weekend, and first time I've worn jeans to church, but it's okay, isn't it? Okay. Just read a little text to you in John chapter 4. My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Can we have this, we've got AirPlay on? Have I got to choose that? Okay, let's try it again. Church. There we go. Good. Alrighty, so, Matavanga Adventist Primary and Special Needs School. This is a school that we helped to pioneer in Gawa, in northern Vanuatu, and there is a plan for Logan Reserve to come, or some people from Logan Reserve to come and help to build a classroom there. It's a primary and special needs school, and we're actually becoming a secondary school as well. And we're also involved in a wellness ministry, which is denominational. The only denominational wellness ministry with inpatients in this division, I think. Anyway, it's in a beautiful location, and we're getting ready for that. Bruce he's the head elder of Monto Church is over there already. We've had some big issues with planes. You remember last time I shared our mall was damaged, and then we were given a replacement aircraft, and I went and dinged it, which was very embarrassing and hard for us because we really need wings. But anyway, putting that aside and laying that aside and pressing on towards the mark ahead, we are still planning to have this fly and build next year. We have Ben with us. Ben is, you may know Janet. She would have attended here with Kimberly when she was here. Janet is our special needs child that's going for the first person in Vanuatu to go for year 10 exams as a deaf student. So it's a big thing for us this year. Anyway, Ben, who is previously was at Mount Gravatt and who's spoken here about this project. Ben is over there. He's our builder, and he's got himself lots to do. And him and his wife Yana are, they're really helping a lot with what's happening. They're building another staff house, and next year they're planning to build a classroom. So even if nobody comes, we're still going to build a classroom. Is that clear? Even if nobody comes to help us, we're still going to build a classroom. But we really want to encourage people to come, and this classroom is going to be very important. It's similar. It's going to be very similar design to the previous one that we did. Ben and some other builders did. Really, probably the nicest building in the province, and it's built to a high standard. And he also needs to build staff houses as well. So even if we can't build a staff house, the classroom, we're still going to build staff housing. So regardless of what happens, we're going to be doing something next year. And we would like Logan Reserve to be involved and to come and help if you can. And what I'd just like to say about this, it's mission, as James mentioned this morning. What is mission? Well, mission is all about needs, and it's always about the next step. Whenever you're focusing on the goal, the mark that's ahead of you, you're pressing towards that mark. As you're heading towards the goal, you've always got to think of the next step. Where have we come from? Where are we headed? And what is the next step? That's what a missionary is constantly focusing on, is on the next step. And in the Jesus method, we mingle with people as one who desires their good. We sympathize with them. We minister to those needs. Right in the middle of this 5-step process is ministering to needs. And then win confidence, and then invite people to come and follow Jesus. And so it's a come and go. We go to mingle with them. We minister to those needs, and then we invite them to come. So it's a come and go program, and it's going to pull us into discipleship. It's going to involve leadership. Turns out it's servant leadership, and it's going to involve teamwork, and it's going to bring in total member involvement. And there's two key things that I've learned from being involved in mission over the last 18 years, and that is momentum is very important, because the way people work, the way human brains work is people follow momentum. They're drawn into mission by momentum. And sometimes momentum takes a little bit to get going. And sometimes people get discouraged, and people who are not experienced, they feel like bad things happen. They do. But we've got to keep going, and we've got to keep on persevering. And that's another thing that's very important about mission, is we must persevere through difficulties. In fact, the more responsibilities you carry, the more difficulties you face, the more the Lord has to throw more difficulties at you to prepare you for the next step. And so it's all about us getting ready. If we want to do this, we can do it. But we must persevere. We must try to encourage momentum. One of the best ways to do that is to focus on what God has already done. And for example, fundraising, some people get really worried about fundraising, but let's just focus on what God has provided so far, and that paves the way for the next. And so we don't worry unduly. We make plans. Someone said, make the plan, and then think positive, and make it happen. And that's what we've got to do when we're involved in mission. Constantly making a plan, thinking positively about the future, and then trying to make it happen. And so as we deal with this whole thing, I just want to encourage this church here at Logan Reserve. We love you guys. We want you to be ready for next year. It's still a long way off, so there's still a lot of preparation to do. But that also means we got time. We got time to build a momentum of getting things ready for this project in Vanuatu. It's very needy, and because we're focusing on the need, which is the next step, that is, we got the right focus. Focus on the need, and God will help us to achieve the mission that's ahead of us. So, I want to encourage everybody. Join the team. Keep on aiming towards the goal. And if we find it hard along the way, we don't get discouraged. We got to keep on. We got to have the maturity, spiritual maturity, to handle discouragements and to keep on pressing towards the goal that God's put for us. This is an Adventist school. It's God's work. He's responsible for the consequences. Our job is to do our part, do everything we can, and where we fail, we let the Lord take care of the next step. He will help us, and I believe it's going to be when we get people involved. One of the best things that happened with the last big group that came from Salisbury Church, it was a whole lot of youth from Salisbury Yugoslav Church, they brought some non-church members with them. And the momentum of going over there pulled these people in, and these people had a wonderful experience over there because they were included in the worship. We've seen that constantly involved, that total member involvement sort of spirit pulling in people from outside the church and involving them in worship, involving them in prayer. People you never expect to come to church, they end up coming to church because they're involved in this. They're praying. They're in the group. They're praying together to make things happen. So mission has that ability to reach people. Amazingly, you would never think of this, but mission is actually one of the most powerful evangelistic tools that we have. And it's also the best thing for reviving a church. It's helpful for church members who are not experienced. It gets people involved, and it's encouraging. I just really believe it's going to be a positive experience. So whoever's leading this, I know Daniel and Mandy and James, Janelle, and I'm not sure who others are involved in the leadership of this, but I do believe that God is going to bless everybody who sticks with it and makes the effort to come. And even if there's only a small handful, sorry for the rest of you guys, but we're going to have a great time. So why not join? It's going to be a good experience. It's going to be a blessing, and it will definitely have repercussions on the church itself. It helps the church. It helps those who go. It helps those who are sort of drawn into it. People outside the church who might be drawn into it. It helps the people when you get there. It helps us who are over there. It helps everybody. It is a sort of universal cure for many ills for us to be involved in mission. That's why God gave us the work. He could have given the job to angels, but he gave the job to us because he knew that we needed it. And it's a blessing. It's like exercise, like spiritual exercise is what it is. You got to be involved. You got to get moving. Otherwise, you're going to lose that healthy tone and activity that we all need in our spiritual lives. I think I've already gone too far, but anyway, too long. But thank you so much. What's that? Okay, 1 or 2. Okay, right. He's given me license to go a couple of minutes. Okay, so I would like to encourage all of us to become more mission-minded. You know, mission is the lifeblood of the church, and it's the breeding ground for leadership. This is where leadership has to take place. People who are not normally involved in leadership, they are thrown into leadership by the need that's created through mission. Mission creates the culture for spiritual development. It develops stability of character. It develops leadership qualities in those who have limited experience. It creates opportunities for people to develop talents and to learn skills. And because we're going to a third world sort of environment, fortunately there's not that huge amount of red tape that's involved in doing stuff within a place like Australia, which is just riddled with red tape. All the documentation and that kind of stuff makes things much harder in a place like Australia. The benefit of going to a place like Vanuatu is there's no building code. Now that makes it sound like, oh, we're going to do dodgy stuff. We're not. We're going to be doing high standard stuff. We've got a chippy who's Queensland, apprentice. He's got built his chippy's ticket from Queensland. He knows what he's doing and he does a good job. He's a perfectionist. He does a fantastic job. He's an excellent builder. So we're not going to do a sloppy job. But because we don't have to go through a whole lot of formalities, it makes things a bit more lickety-snap. The thing that we worry about is shipping. But the good thing about our project is that we have a builder on the ground who's going to get the stuff there before anybody arrives there. And he's got the team ready. He can do the whole thing himself. But he will appreciate help. And this is going to be a blessing for those who come. So why not be involved? And I just believe, honestly, I believe that churches, we have in our church, Matavanga Church, I'm the head elder of the church, we really focus on mission. In fact, every quarter we have one Sabbath when we close the doors of the church and we insist that every church member must go and visit all the company churches that are attached to our organized church. And so it's like compulsory mission. Sounds a bit strict, doesn't it? Sounds like a bit pushy. But the thing is this, we know that people come back full of testimonies, full of stories of experience, how God's blessed them. And one of the things that surprises everybody is they just didn't realize how needy and how appreciative the people were that they went to. Just making that effort to go. Jesus said, go. And Jesus was on his legs walking. He walked a lot when he was in Galilee and Judea. He was constantly on the move, visiting people, being in touch with people, finding out what people were going through. And that is actually he led the path. He led the way for us to be disciples like this. So a church member that's willing to go is a person who's, he's got the spirit of Jesus, because that willingness to go is a good spirit. It's a spirit of, I'm not just going to sit here and be content with what I have. I'm going to go and find somebody, talk to somebody. Even if I go and there's only one person that I can bless, if there's only one person that I can speak to and inspire and encourage, I'm going to go. But as we go, we're going to find that it's more than that. It's way more than that, because the team spirit that it creates, the leadership opportunities, the training experience, and the general tone, the healthy spiritual tone that it brings into our lives and into the church and into the team, it's a blessing on every side. Let's pray about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark. I think we'd better finish. Okay, let's break up for our classes. There's a senior class down here, one up the back, one in the hall, youth meet outside, and I think there's two out on the veranda. Okay, thank you.